Hi, everyone, and welcome to today's Expert Chat. My name is Andrew Lee, and I'm part of the Understood team. Today, we're going to be talking about a really great topic. It's assistive technology for writing. And to help guide us through this topic, we have one of our great experts, Jamie Martin. Hi, Jamie.
Hey, good morning, Andrew. How are you?
Jamie, could you tell our parents a little bit about yourself and your experience with assistive technology before we get started?
Yep. So I've been an educator for many, many years, over 20 at this point. I started out, interestingly, as a mainstream English teacher. I taught middle school English for a while, but then very quickly got into working with kids with dyslexia and fell in love with that, and I've been doing that ever since. Now I'm very much involved in assistive technology, and I'm in private practice at the moment, working with families and teachers around the country, and also really enjoy my work with Understood and helping get some really good content about assistive technology up on the website for parents and educators to stay up to date on what's going on.
Awesome. I think our parents are really going to find a lot of your tips valuable. I just want to remind those of you who are watching that we're doing this live, so if you want to ask any question, just type it right into the chat box. What's really going to help Jamie answer your questions in the best way possible is if you also add your child's age and basically the issue you're struggling with. So, 7 and maybe dyslexia or whatever the issue that you're facing. You can add your first name if you want to, but if not, that's fine as well. With that, we're just going to get started. I'll launch into a few questions first, Jamie. We're talking about writing. That's a pretty broad topic. What are the different kinds of writing challenges that kids with learning and attention issues can face?
Well, writing can be challenging for everybody, not just kids with learning and attention issues. But maybe there are some specific things that, kids with dyslexia or dysgraphia or ADHD, they might face when it comes to writing and the writing process. So spelling and grammar, can certainly be difficult, things to handle. Organizing ideas, editing your writing, all those things can be difficult for someone with a language-based learning difference like dyslexia. Handwriting can also be difficult. Maybe kids with dysgraphia or motor difficulties, being able to hold a writing utensil and form their letters legibly, that might be difficult. Maybe kids with expressive language issues can have difficulty with vocabulary. They have limited vocabulary, maybe, or sentence structure. They tend to write simple sentences. And then kids with attentional issues, kids with ADHD, can also have a lot of difficulty with writing because some aspects of writing are tied into the executive functioning issues that some kids with ADHD experience. So they might have difficulty even getting started, initiating a piece of writing. Then once they get going, they might have difficulty staying on topic. Or actually my son who has ADHD has this difficulty too. Once they get going with a piece of writing, their thoughts start coming out so quickly that they have trouble keeping track of their ideas and getting them down quickly enough either on a piece of paper or on their device screen. So all those kinds of writing difficulties can really play a huge part in terms of writing well for the kids that we have in our families and in our schools.
Awesome. That's a really great breakdown overall, and I think a lot of our parents who are listening probably can identify with one or more of those issues. Now, I wanted to just, before we launch into specific maybe apps and technology, I know there's a little bit of a distinction between like sort of low-tech assistive technology and high-tech assistive technology. Can you help break that down too in case people are watching and might have a question about that?
Yep, sure. So in general, not always, but in general, low-tech tools are non-electronic in nature. So we're talking about things like, I have one here. So we're talking about things like a pencil grip, something like this, which might help kids with motor difficulties hold a writing utensil a little bit easier. Pieces of just loose leaf paper can certainly be a low-tech writing tool. This one does not have raised lines, but I've certainly seen paper with raised lines on it to help kids stay in between the lines. Graph paper is also a very good kind of low-tech tool for both just regular handwriting and maybe for math. What else can we talk about for low tech? Paper-based graphic organizers. When you and I were in school, Andrew, we did a lot of kind of mind mapping on a piece of paper, or Venn diagrams where you had the two circles overlapping. We did all that on paper, and kids can certainly still do that today. In fact, I think Understood has a very good download for those paper-based graphic organizers that they can use. So that's low tech. On the other hand, high tech tools are generally electronic in nature. I think this is what most people think about when they think about assistive technology today. So we're talking about things like the iPhone or an Android phone or a tablet or a Chromebook or a traditional desktop or laptop computer. All those kinds of devices have built-in assistive technology right in the operating system. But then there are also apps or extensions when we're talking about Chrome or software, all those kinds of things that can really make a difference in terms of providing the correct accommodations for kids with learning and attention issues.
Awesome. That's a great summary. Now, as we expected, Jamie, we've already got questions coming in. So
awesome.
We had sort of a set number of questions, but I want to launch into some of the ones that have been asked because I know parents really have these concerns and just want to get right to them. So here's the first one. This one is from, and I think these go right to what you wanted to talk about. This is from Lori. Child's handwriting is completely unreadable. Not really clear what age the kid is, but I think this is probably a common issue for many kids writing. Any sort of assistive technology that could kind of address that? Just the handwriting is totally unreadable.
Sure. So, when you're talking about someone with dysgraphia or motor issues, or they write too quickly, whatever the issue is that results in handwriting that might be illegible or difficult to read, there's a couple different tools that you can consider, having that child use. So one is dictation, and dictation technology is when the child will speak their words, and the technology will transcribe. It will kind of record their voice, transcribe those spoken words into electronic text, and then that text is printed out on the screen of whatever device that you're using. So that could be a really useful tool for not only for kids with handwriting issues, but kids with spelling and grammar issues as well. So it's kind of like a multi-purpose accommodation. When we're talking about where to find it, in this day and age, I think dictation is found in many different operating systems. So you can find it built right into iOS, which is the operating system on Apple devices. You can find it built into Android devices as well. On a traditional laptop, desktop kind of computer. It's built right into both the Mac OS operating system and the Windows operating system. And on a Chromebook, because I know a lot of families use Chromebooks, a lot of schools use Chromebooks, you can find dictation as part of, that's actually built into Chrome as well. So there's an on-screen keyboard in the Chrome operating system, which has a built-in dictation tool. You can use that. Or you can find dictation in a variety of different extensions and Chrome apps, things like that. And it's also built right into Google Docs. So that's a different place that you can find that. I do want to mention one thing about dictation, then I'm going to switch gears and mention a little bit about word prediction. So last week, and it was big news that in addition to having the built-in speech recognition in the Windows operating system, Microsoft announced that dictation is now going to be built into all of the Office software. So if you're using Microsoft Word or PowerPoint, there will be a dictation tool built right in there that will function very similarly to Google Docs voice typing. So you need to be connected to the internet, but it'll be built right into those writing tools so you can use that. So that's the dictation piece. Word prediction is when kids are using a keyboard. They're still typing on a keyboard. But what the word prediction technology will do is predict what that child, or an adult, if an adult is using it, what that person is trying to write, and give you a list of choices. It will try to predict what you're trying to write based on just a couple of characters. So again, that can be helpful for kids with spelling issues or kids with kind of those motor issues too, because then they don't have to type so much. So word prediction options, again, built into various operating systems. Actually, as part of Microsoft's announcement last week, they've also announced that they're going to be adding word prediction into the Windows 10 operating system. So they're going to have both dictation and word prediction built right into Windows, which would be really cool. But here's another really good, not a but, in addition to, here's another really cool word prediction announcement. Don Johnston, who many of you might be familiar with, they created Co-Writer, the Co-Writer word prediction tool. This week at the Assistive Technology Industry Association conference in Orlando, Florida, they are going to talk about a brand new word prediction technology that they have developed. They are calling it Neuron word prediction. And basically what it's going to do is use artificial intelligence to analyze what you are writing in whatever document you're writing. And then it's going to kind of determine what topic you're writing about and start predicting vocabulary having to do with that topic. So those of you who might have used Co-Writer in the past know that it has a feature called topic dictionaries, where kids can turn on a topic dictionary so that it will predict topic-specific vocabulary. What this new technology will do in the new versions of Co-Writer will do that automatically. So once you start typing and writing something, it will analyze your writing, determine the topic you're writing about, and automatically start predicting those words having to do with that topic. So that was a really long answer to Lori's question. But I did want to touch on those kind of news items to make sure people knew about that. Dictation, word prediction, very good options for kids with handwriting issues.
Great. No, that's really helpful. I wanted to touch a question that a couple people have asked. A lot of people asked, they are interested in dictation and word prediction. How do they get in the IEP? That's not exactly the subject of this expert chat, but we're going to paste a resource into the chat box that basically lets you know that as part of that process, IEP 504 process, your child has a right to that assistive technology. So we're going to paste that into the chat box. So just keep that in mind if you're interested in that. What we're trying to do here is talk a little bit through the tool. So going back to dictation, and there's been a couple questions about this. If I'm interested in using that, what's the first step? Do I just look at sort of what system what system I have, and then try to figure out what the tool is? Like, how would I get in that? Because there's a lot of options out there, right?
That's right. You could be a really good AT consultant, Andrew. That was really good. So, yes, basically what I would do, if I was consulting with someone who was interested in starting to use dictation, first thing I would say would be, okay, what operating system or what kind of device do you use? Do you use an iPad? Do you use a Chromebook? Do you use a laptop or desktop computer? Chances are you're going to be able to find a very good dictation tool built right into whatever operating system you're using. So, for example, if your child uses an iPad, it's built right into the on-screen keyboard, and it's very easy to use. There's no training involved in any of those kind of built-in options. They're the easiest to use. And that's where I would start because they're free because they're built in. You do have to buy the device, but you don't have to buy anything additional. And they're easier to use than something like a very robust, full-feature piece of software. So start with that. If that doesn't work for some reason, if what's being transcribed is not as accurate as you would like it to be, or is not as accurate as your child needs it to be, then you can start thinking about individual apps or pieces of software. Traditionally, people talked about Dragon, all the Dragon dictation tools, Dragon Naturally Speaking, Dragon Dictate, and those certainly work very, very well, but they cost money. So I would start with the free ones first that are built in, see how that works, and then work your way up the ladder.
Awesome. Let's hop to a question for at-home DOC or at-home doc. And this is a question that's been asked by a number of people. What's a simple mind mapping software that you recommend for sort of 6th grade, starting to get familiar with writing? Another parent has asked, sort of like their kid has issues with sort of grouping their ideas. Is there sort of an introductory mind mapping that can help those kids to sort of get their ideas together?
Sure. Can you tell me one more time, Andrew, what age this child is?
This child is 6th grade, so probably just starting to really get into writing.
Right. Yes, my son is in 6th grade, and we've seen a dramatic increase in the amount of writing that he's doing. So I think you're right on the track there, Andrew. So electronic graphic organizers are sometimes called mind mapping tools. So what you're doing there is creating those visuals and organizing your ideas visually, not on paper, but on an app or a piece of software, or there are even some web-based tools that you can use as well. One that I like a lot is called Inspiration Maps. On the desktop, it's actually called Inspiration. So you can get that for either a Mac or a Windows computer. On an iPad or an iOS device, it's called Inspiration Maps. And what's really nice about that tool is that kids can organize their ideas visually in a mind map. And then all they have to do is tap one button, and it will flip the screen around, and it will convert that mind map into a formal linear outline, which is probably the next step in that writing process. They need to have it linearly in order to get their ideas into sentence structures and paragraphs and things like that. So Inspiration Maps is very good. It does have several bells and whistles. So if your child might be distracted by all of that, maybe a simpler example would be something like Poplet. Although for a 6th grader, that might be a little bit too simplistic. He or she might think it's a little bit too young for them, but for younger kids or kids who just need a really clean, simple mind map, Poplet is a very good option. What else can I tell you? MindMeister is also a very good option as well. And MindMeister is actually available as a Chrome app. So if you have a child who's a Chromebook user, Inspiration is not available for Chrome, at least not yet. So MindMeister would be a very good option for Chrome. But that will do the same kind of thing. It will allow them to organize their ideas visually. And then on a Chromebook, you can then export that visual graphic organizer as a formal outline right into Google Docs. So they can continue the writing process in a word processor once they've organized their ideas visually. One other kind of key feature of Inspiration, which I like a lot, and MindMeister has this as well, they have built-in templates, writing templates. So for a 5-paragraph essay, you can pop up a template. That way kids aren't necessarily having to generate the whole thing themselves. If they don't remember all the different parts of a 5-paragraph essay, they can just kind of plug their ideas into this writing template. So that would be a really good option as well.
Awesome. And we just pasted in links to Poplet and I believe Inspiration Maps, the reviews of them. You can also find those on the App Store. But just so if you're watching and you miss those names, we just pasted them in. There's a question from Cynthia. This is about getting dictation in the IEP. I just want to repeat again that your child has a right, if they have an IEP, to get that assistive technology. So please do raise that with your IEP team. And then there's another question from Momo5. This is an interesting question for you, Jamie. Momo5, word prediction is awful for Momo5's son. Boy has dysgraphia and dyslexia, and the word prediction somehow doesn't work when there are two different words, for example, or they're very similar. How can, any tips for Momo5 in terms of getting the word prediction to use right, to be work a little bit better when the words sort of start with the same letter, like hearing with the ear versus here, I'm here right now. Any thoughts about that?
Right. Yes. So the better word prediction tools, the better word prediction options, will have a kind of text-to-speech feedback as you're using it. So when those word prediction options pop up in that box or in the line, if it's going across horizontally, if you hover or if you tap on one of those choices, the better word prediction options will read that out loud as kind of a preview. Also, the better word prediction options will do a really good job of recognizing phonetic misspellings. So if your child has dyslexia, for example, and they are maybe going through some kind of remedial work, something like Gordon Gillingham or Wilson or Linda Modell, one of those, and they're still learning their phonics skills, they can practice those and spell, even if they don't know how to spell a word correctly, they can sound it out phonetically based on what they're learning in their phonics studies. And the really good word prediction tool, something like Co-Writer, or another one is WordQ, the better options will recognize a phonetic misspelling and show you a couple of different choices as to what it thinks the correct spelling is. But actually what you were talking about, Andrew, was when you have kind of like confusable words like homonyms, right?
Mm-hmm, yeah.
So there are also some word prediction tools, and WordQ, that's all one word, WordQ, is an option that does this. So for those kind of confusable words, what WordQ will do is not only show you the word prediction choices, but for each of those choices, it will kind of show you a dictionary definition or an example sentence with that word in it. And that might help Momo 5's child better be able to make that choice between those confusable words. WordQ does that, and another tool that does that is called Gotit, G-H-O-T-I-T.
Yeah.
And they actually, Gotit has an iPad version called Dyslexia Keyboard, which will do that as well. So you need to do your homework a little bit, but look for a word prediction tool that has text-to-speech feedback, one that will read the words out loud before you click on it or tap on it, and also try to find one that will give you kind of example sentences for each word choice in that word prediction to help you kind of better distinguish between those confusable words like those homonyms.
Yeah, if you actually Momo 5, you're looking for a specific tool. Jamie mentioned a couple like Gotit, and you can go to Tech Finder on the site and look up writing and see those assistive technology tools. Some of those tools might be able to help you, so you may be able to look through depending on what system you have. Let's go to the next question. This is from Steffi. Jamie, this is Steffi's out there asking a question probably a lot are interested in. Doesn't provide the age of the child, but really interested in Chrome extensions to help with writing. So many kids are using Chrome now. Any particular extensions you like for writing on Chrome?
Sure. There are tons of them. So, let me see if I can just limit it to a few. And then actually, Steffi, what you should do after we're done here is check out. A while back, I did an Understood webinar on Chrome. So it's an hour-long webinar where I highlight a lot of what I'm going to just kind of mention quickly right now, and you can kind of see what they look like in that webinar. And you really kind of dive deep into that. So a couple of extensions I really like for Chrome. Read and Write for Google Chrome by a company called TextHelp is really good. Has dictation tools, has word prediction tools as well. Co-Writer has a Chrome extension, which is a very good writing tool for Chrome. Those are the Chrome extensions. But keep in mind, I think I mentioned this a little bit earlier, Google Docs on Chrome does have built-in dictation. They call that voice typing. So that's in the Tools drop-down menu when you're inside of a Google Doc. But you do have to be using the Chrome web browser for that, though. So if you're on a Chromebook, no problem. That's the only browser you can use. If you're on a Mac or a Windows computer and you're using Google Docs, you do need to be using the Chrome web browser for that Google voice typing to work. But then there's also options called Google Docs add-ons. So if you're using a Chromebook and you're writing in Google Docs, there's another drop-down menu inside of Google Docs called add-ons. And those are kind of tools that get attached to that Google Doc and can help you with writing. So there's things like there's a spell and grammar checker that's very good called Verity Spell. There's a bibliography creator if you're doing a research project. There's an EasyBib bibliography creator add-on there as well. And actually one that I really like that I've discovered recently is a Google Docs add-on called WriteWell. So all one word, WriteWell. And what that will do is provide writing templates. There's a whole menu of writing templates, 5-paragraph essay, science lab report, things like that. And when you click on any one of those templates, it will import it right into your Google Doc. And then kids can use things like read and write, maybe, to flesh out their ideas using that template. So we talked a little bit about templates earlier in inspiration. Google Docs add-on WriteWell has lots of writing templates also. But definitely, Stephanie, check out that Chromebook webinar that I did for Understood a while back. You should be able to find it in the archive, and that will help you out too.
Yeah, that's definitely. We just pasted another piece that Jamie had worked on about Chrome extensions. So, Steffi, hopefully that will help you out. We'll also dig up the webinar and paste it into the chat box just so you have it. And I know those are great because my kid also has Chrome at school. It's such a common platform now.
The great thing. Sorry, Andrew. The great thing about Chrome is that it's non-device specific. So all of these tools that I just mentioned kind of get attached to your child's Google account. So a lot of schools that are using Google Apps for education, like Google Docs and things like that, will give their students Google accounts, and whatever tools that they have they're providing will get attached to that child's account. So you don't need a specific device. They can use them when they log into Google at school. They can go to the library and log into the library computer, into the Google account, and all their tools will show up there as well. So it's kind of like, all the tools kind of live in the cloud, and kids can access them wherever they are without needing a specific device.
Awesome. That's great. That's great advice for people who may want to try out some of that Chrome stuff. Here's another question that from one of our parents. It's from I guess very descriptive, from Mom, asking what suggestions you have for a kid who's about 6 to 9 years old learning how to type. We know that keyboards probably help a lot of kids with some handwriting issues. Do you have any suggestions for that? How they might be able to sort of learn how to do that?
Mm-hmm. We do have on Understood not too long ago, and maybe you can find this and put it in the chat box as well. Several different kind of electronic tools that you can use to help your kids learn how to type. There's some online tools there. There's a couple of apps in that piece as well. So we'll get that to you in the chat box, hopefully. But actually, what I always recommend first is a very kind of non-technological tool. We're talking about low-tech technology, or not low-tech tools earlier on. This is kind of one of those low-tech kind of tools. So one of I think I mentioned this in the last chat we did, Andrew. One of the pioneers of Orton Gillingham, which is a remedial approach to language. One of the early pioneers is a woman named Diana King, and she's very much into multisensory teaching, things like that in terms of writing. And she developed a typing method, a keyboarding method, very simply called Keyboarding Skills. So you look up Keyboarding Skills by Diana King, and basically it's a little flip book that you kind of work through with your children, but it's a multisensory alphabetic approach. So kind of the traditional way of learning how to type is where grouping letters together where they are on the keyboard, on the QWERTY keyboard. What Diana King does is teach the letters on the keyboard alphabetically and in a multisensory manner. So as kids are typing the letters, they kind of say out loud what they're typing. They get the kinesthetic piece with the keyboard, and they can see it on the screen, with their eyes. So it's very much of a multi-sensory approach to do it, and it's alphabetical. And when I was an Orton Gillingham tutor years ago, we saw lots of success with that kind of method. So give that some thought too. If you have the time to work through typing with your child, check that out. Keyboarding Skills by Diana King.
Awesome. And we also did paste the article that Jamie referenced about just typing programs in general into the chat box. So, Mom, if you want to take a look at that, you can. This is actually a great segue because you did mention sort of a low-tech for writing. And I know you had talked a little bit about those in the beginning. We have a question for Tamami and a few other people, because their kids may not have access to sort of the internet, or typically younger kids, maybe not really experienced with using sort of some of those electronic devices. Any other sort of low-tech options that are out there for 6-year-olds? Tamami's asked this, Anna's asked this, that you sort of like, and maybe recommend
for writing.
Yeah.
Yeah. So depends on what the issue is.
Okay.
If it's a spelling and a grammar issue, there used to be kind of those little single use, what are they called, Franklin spellers or something like that.
Yeah.
I'm sure they still make Franklin spellers that kids can use for spelling. But other than that, I think most of those AT tools for spelling and grammar have kind of graduated into things like apps and operating systems, stuff like that. For just handwriting issues, maybe kids with motor issues, in addition to the pencil grip, which I mentioned earlier, and the raised lines on loose leaf paper, I've also seen kids have success with something called a slant board, which will reposition out flat on the success with paper graphic organizers, a little bit earlier on too. Those are really good. Those are really helpful, those paper graphic organizers. The only thing that maybe the electronic graphic organizers have, kind of over that, is that you don't necessarily have to redo all that work that you put into creating that mind map, because you can just hit a button and it'll convert it automatically into an outline. If you're doing a graphic organizer on a piece of paper, you're going to have to rewrite all that information again when it comes time to formulate your sentences and your paragraphs and things like that.
That's really helpful. So those are some options if you are interested in the low-tech. We'll actually paste in, I think, you mentioned graphic organizers. There's sort of the MindMeister, the technology one. But we'll paste in another article, which I believe you worked on, which is more the paper graphic organizers. So we're going to paste that in the chat for those parents who are interested in it. The next question that comes up, we have time for a little bit more. Jamie's got time for a little bit more to answer a few more. Here's this is from another mom. Maybe it is the same mom, talking about sort of the Apple keyboard versus co-writer. And I'm actually not super familiar with this, but it's a 9-year-old daughter. She prefers the Apple keyboard versus using co-writer. Are there any other suggestions for these sort of keyboards that can be used on the screen, or that can help kids who have writing issues?
Mm-hmm, sure. So they're kind of called alternative on-screen keyboards. Okay. So on Apple devices, on iOS devices, your phone or your iPad will come with the Apple keyboard. And it's good to note that the Apple keyboard for iOS devices is the only one that will have dictation as part of it. All of the other alternative on-screen keyboards like co-writer or read and write for iPad, or Keeble keyboard is another word prediction one, or dyslexia keyboard, I think I mentioned a little bit earlier. All of those will have very good word prediction. They'll have better word prediction, actually, than the built-in Apple keyboard. But the Apple keyboard will be the only one with dictation. And I think that's because Apple will only allow the Apple keyboard to have dictation. So in whatever the coding is, when people are creating these alternative keyboards, they're not allowed access to that dictation technology that's part of the operating system. So it really kind of depends on what your kids' writing issues are, and what they're comfortable using, what they need to use, that kind of thing. If they need to use dictation, they do need to use the Apple keyboard. But I will say this, it's very easy to switch back and forth between the Apple keyboard and another keyboard. Basically, there's that little world button, which is it used to be the emoji button. And you just tap on that and it'll just scroll through your keyboards for you. So even within one document, you can switch back and forth depending on what kind of help you need while you're writing. So I did mention a couple of alternatives there, right, Andrew?
Yeah,
so
you did.
Co-Writer Universal was the word prediction one. Read and Write has one as well. Keeble, I think I mentioned. And Dyslexia Keeble. Oh, I should mention this too. Grammarly, which is a spell and grammar check. It's like an advanced spell and grammar check tool. Originally, it was an online tool at Grammarly.com. They've just, in the last month or so, released an alternative keyboard for at least iOS devices. I'm not sure about Android. But that will help kids with that advanced spell and grammar check right inside of whatever document that they're working on. So that's a good one to take a look at too. I think that's free.
Okay, great. That's very helpful. Thanks so much. And I think that hopefully that question helped a lot. We got a couple questions from, I'm going to list your guys' names just because it's all along the similar vein. Connie, Jill, Lisa, asking about sort of dysgraphia information. This is an assistive technology chat, and we have been talking a bit about writing issues, but I also do want to encourage you guys to come in to the community on this weekend. They're doing a whole sort of weekend wisdom about this, writing and reading. And what that's useful for is that you can kind of get a little bit more of a written response and, a little bit more specifics. If you do have a specific question for Jamie, just type it in and let us know what specific aspect of dysgraphia and assistive technology you'd like to address. But I think that the Weekend Wisdom might be a better place to sort of get that information. And another question is actually from Kim. She has a child with dyslexia, 5th grade girl, not about writing, but really about reading. Reading assistive technology. I feel like we can answer that. Jamie, is there anything you might be able to suggest for this 5th grade girl if maybe it's her first experience with assistive technology?
Sure. So the first thing I always recommend for reading issues is text-to-speech technology. And what that will do is look at a piece of electronic text and convert it into spoken language using synthesized computer voices. And the computer voices today are not robotic at all. They're very good. They're very human sounding. So kids should not have too many issues, being open to that kind of reading. But actually, I should say this, and then I'll give you some examples of text-to-speech tools that you can check out. Text-to-speech is also a very good writing tool. So when it comes to the proofreading and the editing step of writing, the first thing I always recommend that kids do is use a text-to-speech tool to listen to what they just composed, what they just wrote. Then they can, listen to how it sounds. They can hear if they misspelled a word or if they left a word out of that sentence. They can even hear how that sentence sounds, so they might want to structure it a little bit differently. So text-to-speech is also a very good writing tool as well as a reading tool. So reading, text-to-speech, again, is built into most operating systems. It's part of iOS. It's part of Android. It's built right into the Mac OS operating system. For Chrome, there's lots of different text-to-speech options as well. In terms of extensions, there's one called Select and Speak, which is free. There's one called Speechify, which is fairly new on the scene, and that's a really good text-to-speech tool as well. I should mention this too. Microsoft is really doing a really good job of improving their accessibility. So Microsoft also has a text-to-speech tool called Immersive Reader. which is built into Microsoft Word. It's built into the Edge browser for Windows as well. And that will take a piece of text. It's built into OneNote if your kids use OneNote. It will take a piece of text and kind of allow kids to change the size of the font. It will read it out loud with synchronized highlighting as well. What's kind of cool, I've never seen this in another text-to-speech tool, but what the immersive reader will do is also break words up into syllables. So, if you have a child who is, doing Orton Gillingham remediation or something like that, and they're going through an oral reading exercise, if they're still having difficulty breaking words into syllables, they can use that Microsoft tool called Immersive Reader to break it up into syllables to help them, read it a little bit easier that way. So that's another text-to-speech tool. One of my all-time favorites is a text-to-speech tool called Voice Dream Reader. Voice Dream Reader is available for iOS. It's available for Android. If you have a newer Chromebook that runs Android apps, you can even use it on your Chromebook. What I really like about Voice Dream is that everything is completely customizable in terms of visually, how text looks on the screen and how it sounds. And it also will sync up with kids' Bookshare accounts. So Bookshare is a great resource for free electronic books for kids with documented learning differences. And you can download all those books right into the Voice Dream app and read them that way. I could keep going forever, but let me stop there in case you have any last-minute questions.
No, that's great. So first of technology is definitely text-to-speech. We just pasted another link into, and this is just for you guys' benefits watching. It's a video that Jamie did with us where he actually demonstrates how to turn text-to-speech on a phone. And so if you're a little nervous about that, don't know how that works, just take a look at that video. It's a pretty simple one for both Android and for iOS, and kind of introduces you to it. We'll give you one last question. I know we've kept you a while, but I think it's been useful to get all these questions answered. And it's a pretty easy one that follows up on this. What do you think is the earliest age you could try to, try to expose kids to some of this assistive technology, maybe with text-to-speech? What's like a good early age to do that, or the earliest time you can?
In the womb. I don't think there's ever a time when kids are too young. Because listen, if they have dyslexia, or if you have a history of dyslexia in your family, and even if your child is not reading yet, but there's a pretty good chance that they might get passed down, through heredity, that your child might be dyslexic. Just expose them to it so that they're used to it, and it becomes part of their normal life. So all those really early kind of emerging reader apps, like all those Sesame Street ones that read stories out loud and do the highlighting as it goes along. Those are really good ways to introduce very young kids to something like text-to-speech, or audiobooks with synchronized highlighting, things like that. But it's never a good idea to wait too long, I don't think, because what assistive technology is going to do is allow kids to access material that's on their intellectual levels, even if their language skills don't match their intellectual levels. And there's no need to hold them back intellectually if you can give them a tool to help them be challenged and do that. In terms of writing, it's going to help them express their ideas the way they want to express them. So if they have tremendous spelling or handwriting issues in second and third grade, but they have really good ideas, if they don't have a tool that's going to help them express those ideas, they're not going to. And what's going to come out in writing is going to be far below their intellectual level. So what the assistive technology does is make kids independent, and it allows them to access and demonstrate their knowledge like everybody else, on par with their intelligence. And the earlier you can introduce it, the better off they're going to be, because it needs to be part of their lives. Eventually, they're going to need to advocate for themselves and tell their teachers or their employers eventually, what kind of tools they need to be successful. And the earlier you can introduce that to them and get them used to it, the better off you're going to be in the long run.
Well, those are great words to sort of end on. Really appreciate your perspective here, Jamie. Thanks so much for joining us. For those of you who are watching, you may want to continue the conversation, feel like maybe we didn't get to one of your questions. Please do go to u.org/community, jump on the community, just ask a question, because Jamie pops in there quite often as well, and some of our other experts who have expertise in sort of diagnosing dysgraphia or other teaching methods, all types of experts. So get in there and just ask the questions, and you can get some help. Thanks for joining us, and have a great day, everyone.